Welcome to Sow and Tell, the Armistead official podcast. Thank you for being with us again. I'm Craige Hoover. This is Brian Wright. We are here talking about the new development called Armistead in Franklin, Tennessee. For those of you who want a little bit more of an overview, you can check out our, we'll call it the initial podcast or the first episode or the teaser episode. But today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the origin and the process and learning a little bit more about Armistead.
Well, when we started here today, you just used the word development. This is about the new development. And for me, I think that, we are doing development, but we're creating a community.
Yeah.
We're creating a village. So much more than just the development. And so I think really diving into a little bit about, how do we do that? What makes it more than just a development might be interesting to some of you who haven't joined us thus far. Hopefully we have plenty of our frequent flyers and fans. So hello out there for all the people that we've met before. And hopefully we have some new people that haven't participated yet. But really for us, trying to honor the family's vision about, creating a special place, a true community, a true village, building on the history, but looking to the future and being innovative while being reverent, I think is important.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe just to get a little altitude here and say, what is the plan here, right? And we talked in the last episode about what an agri-hood is. Maybe Brian, kind of refresh a little bit with the cliff notes of what an agri-hood is, and then I'll maybe talk about what the development program is or the community program is. I'll try not to use development so much. It was a little stale.
Yeah. So the big idea is, as Craige mentioned, to create an agri-hood. And if you haven't seen the last episode, in a nutshell, an agri-hood is a community that incorporates agriculture as part of the strategy for placemaking and for functionality, growing food that we'll eat. People there in the community will eat, as well as visitors will eat. But we've taken it one step further and incorporated the concepts of new urbanism, making a walkable, mixed-use, compact, diverse community that it has the agriculture interwoven throughout it, and in a way that has not been done before in the country, certainly not in the region. And so it's taking Franklin, that is an amazing community. We were founded in 1799. Not far from downtown Nashville, and our community, our property, the land, the farm is across the street from Franklin's current favorite neighborhood called West Haven, which is also a new urbanist, walkable, mixed-use community.
And where we sit at this very moment.
Yes. Our office is located there as well, and I live in the neighborhood a couple of blocks away. And but it's great because this site, the location of both of these communities we're only like 3 miles from downtown Franklin. Wonderful, one of the best historic main streets in the country. So we have this really cool opportunity to build on that past, on the heritage there, the farming heritage, even though we're close to the small town of Franklin and the big city of Nashville. And Franklin is known around the state for sure, if not the country, for being pretty progressive in its planning and how we sort of are a planning focused community, and we're actually taking that to the next level and even moving beyond the excellence that's been accomplished in West Haven.
Yeah. So what are we going to have here? I think that's the biggest. People come up to me all the time. They've heard about this and they say, "Well, what are you is it going to be homes? Is it going to be retail? Or we're going to have restaurants? We've heard about the farm, but is it all going to be like so much of Franklin, where you've got $2-3 million homes everywhere, or is this going to be a little different? And the answer is yes to all of the above. In fact,
I was going to say D, all of the above.
Yeah, right. So. And I think what we're excited about is from the very beginning, the Short family, when we talked about what they wanted, and they talked about what's most important, is that they wanted a place for cradle to grave living. And that means people of all ages, at all stages of their life and career, have an opportunity to live in this community. And that means that we're going to have a wide array of housing types. So we'll have tiny little apartments, big estate lots, townhomes, tiny homes. We'll have some courtyards, some condos. We really do plan to have a little bit of everything, so that if wherever you are in your life and career, you have an opportunity to come and live and be a part of this community. And because one of the things that I'm sure everyone gets sick of me saying, and I'm sure I'll say it a lot here, is that diversity is the key to every ecosystem, and communities are no different. And so we want to have a wide mix of just about every use that you might imagine. We probably won't have a high-rise or any sort of industrial use, other than perhaps some industrial farming at a smaller scale. But
the city's made sure of that. That we don't have high-rises with the zoning and with Envision Franklin, and the family as well, and their hopes and dreams for the future, and then us. Knowing that character really counts, and the more character, the more authentic that this place feels and is and becomes in the future. The better experience will be, quality of life for people who are living in the community, as well as people who are working there, as well as people who are visiting there. And then, again, because this is a development, the more profitable it is, because people really want that authentic that we're seeking to create.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things I like to do is when we get bogged down in the day-to-day of trying to get this off the ground and get it through planning and everything. But every now and then I'll sit back and I'll just sort of close my eyes and I imagine what it might be like to walk down the streets of Armistead here in 2 or 3 years, and again in 7 to 9 years, and then again in maybe 10 to 15 years, and how it will evolve, and what I can imagine seeing in the sights and smells and sounds, and there's so much of it all there. But it all started 135 years ago. Wow. Depending on when you're listening to this podcast. Right. But yes, right now.
2023.
That's right. When the Short family basically settled this property so long ago. And we won't get too far into the history today. We look forward to having the family on to talk about their own history. But it has been a continuously operating farm for 135 years. And then about a couple of years ago, they cut a highway through it. And then, of course, West Haven, where we sit today, was developed across the street. And the last remaining farmer in the family was getting time to think about retiring. And the family looked at each other and said, well, it's time to move off of what this farm has been for so long, but we don't want to move so far that it just becomes a little, another cookie cutter subdivision. So talk a little bit about why you think, or talk about why that inspired you to be on this team and to create the plan that we have.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, driving past the property for 18 years and worrying about it because it's so beautiful. I mean, the historic farm structures are located close enough to Highway 96 that you see them. They're very visible, unlike a lot of farms that are set way far back from the road. So I drive past and see the silo and the different barn buildings and the house there, and this beautiful meandering stream. And I worried about, what would become of it. And, having a planning background and running a planning firm, I just, always hoped to be able to be involved. And, fortunately, through the past 18 years, I've been doing projects, around the country, and we've been incorporating agriculture into them before agrihood even was a name of, a planning concept. And, And so, when the family was looking for a development team, and you and I decided to go after it to be the developer, we had a lot to show in sort of, my experience planning, and then obviously yours with South Hall. I think that it really helping the family through this process to make sure that what comes out the other end, the village that is built, is something that they will never be hesitant to come into. One of my goals was to create a place where they might actually want to move back to the farm.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anybody that, but as we were going through the planning process and sort of completed the initial plan, some of the family members came up and said, I think I might like to live right here. To me, that was success. Hanging up right there.
At the risk of this sounding like an infomercial, which it is not, quite honestly, just about everyone that I've described this project to has come up to me and one of their responses is, "Well, I sure want to live there."
Oh yeah.
Because and I do too. And I've talked with my wife about it, and it's like, by the time this thing starts to really, be a real place, our son will probably go off to college, and we'll be wanting to downsize. And I can just imagine us living in one of these condos above the town center and coming down and enjoying the community and being a part of it. And because, who knows, maybe at that point we'll be too immersed in it. But I sure, when I close my eyes, I imagine myself being able to walk home from whatever I'm doing. So yeah, that's exciting.
It's funny for me too, living across the street in West Haven, excited to be involved and gearing up to work on the plan and then, creating the plan. And it hadn't occurred to me that it might be somewhere that I would consider moving, because there's never been anywhere besides West Haven that I would ever think of living. I was involved in the development of West Haven, worked, for the planning firm that planned it initially. Then I worked for the developer for Southern Land Company, and so entrenched here. And this is the type of planning that my firm does exclusively. And one of my friends asked me, "So are you going to move across the street?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm torn. This is like, how could I not? Right. This is going to be so, even next level amazing." And so, but the other thing is, having, like I said, driven by here for all these years, but then finally getting to be involved, then I was like, oh no, now I'm involved.
Yeah.
And my neighborhood is across the street, and they're going to be most impacted by, whatever we do, good or bad. Yeah. And so what are my friends and my parents even live here? What are my friends and family going to think? If that really sets the bar high for what we've got to do. And so I worried as we were going through the public process about what people are going to say. And so maybe this is a good segue into what that process was.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, so one of the things that the family talked about from the very beginning, and one of the reasons I believe that we were fortunate enough to be selected as the development team, was the public process, and to having a transparent public process, because we've seen developments that were that maybe had the best intentions go sideways because the planning kind of happened behind closed doors, and it was sort of unveiled. And then all of a sudden the public said, but wait, we don't want any more growth. And the truth is that, look, Franklin's growing at an alarming rate. And we actually do need more development here in Franklin and in Williamson County in general. So we actually just need more rooftops just to accommodate the demand for people being here. And of course, there's a good way of doing it and a bad way of doing it. And there's a good way of introducing new developments to the community and actually achieving. You'll never find a consensus, but at least achieving some level of transparency and information flow that gets people on board and to understand the process. And that is really, Brian, that is your bailiwick as and of course, we were going to be using all manner of farm metaphors throughout this podcast, and for probably the rest of my life with Armistead. So forgive us there in advance. But so the charrette process is something that is a hallmark of sort of the new urbanism planning process, but it is something that Brian, you and your firm have done all over the country and with great success. Talk about the charrette. Talk about this charrette and why it is so important and what came of it all.
Yeah, well,
in that order, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to do my best to remember. So charrette, you may have seen the posters or the banners. You may have said, "What the heck is a charrette?" Hopefully, you participated. So now you say, "I know what that is," and that is awesome. Mm-hmm. But for those who didn't participate, charrette is just a fancy word that means a very public. The way we do it, a very public design process over multiple days. I think we did 5 or 6 days where we, set up our office. Even though we're in Franklin, we wanted to go to a place that was, more centrally located where everyone felt more comfortable going. And so my team from, my planning firm, as well as some sub-consultants, as well as the family and, Craige, obviously, and others, we set up over in the factory, and we had a kickoff presentation, sort of the first night, the night before, at Franklin Christian Academy. They did a wonderful thing by letting us have our event there, which is right across the street from the property. So as you would come and go into the gym, you were seeing what we were about to talk about in real life. And so we had that opening presentation where we started talking about the concepts of, planning, good planning, rural development and growth, the growth pressures that we're facing here in Franklin and Williamson County, like Craige mentioned, and agrihood, et cetera, et cetera. And those videos are also, on the webpage, so you'll be able to go and watch those presentations if you missed it. And then once we created that sort of framework and the common language that everybody was sort of on the same page, then we had everybody break out into groups. I don't know, there were like 100 people there maybe, which is a pretty good turnout for something like this. And we had maps of the property, and we let people be planners for the night and said, share with us your thoughts and ideas and just sketch and just there's no dumb idea, no idea is too big or too small, put it all out there. And people did a great job. And so we take the results, everything that's on those maps, and each table, each group of 8 or 10 people would actually presented their ideas to the whole community, to everybody who was participating. And so you could start to see after a few tables, and this is the way it normally happens in a charrette, after a few tables, some of the same ideas are coming up, and you're like, okay, cool. Those are the ones that are, probably going to end up sort of making it through. But then you also find that there's some, a random novel idea that pops up at a table that no one else had said, no one thought of, we hadn't even considered. And so that's what was exciting too. One thing I didn't say is that at the beginning of the charrette, we don't put pen to paper until we show up and hear from the community. Unlike the conventional sort of typical development process where, the plan is all baked and, maybe you get to have a neighborhood meeting and the planner's kind of got the plan in their back pocket and the developer says, what do you want to see? And then we're like, okay, good, here, or they just say, here's what it is. Don't you like it? So we show up with a blank piece of paper and go through this process. The next step would, sort of moving into the next day, we have a series of technical meetings, different topics. So we talked about housing, of course. We talked about utilities, infrastructure, all the things that are going to be important to making sure this place is, functions properly as a community. And we had experts from the city there, from different departments. Those are all open to the community as well. And everybody, people were able to ask questions, like, well, I heard this or I heard that. And the city was like, well, actually, we have plenty of capacity for this or that or the other. Mm-hmm. And so we go through those meetings, we take diligent notes, and that all goes into the hopper with the vision from the night before. Mm-hmm. And we start compiling a list of big ideas and things that people shared with us or things that pop into our head and, or remind us of something that, we've seen or experienced elsewhere around the country in our other work. And then we have we're actually working on the plan real time too.
Right.
So one part of the room, those technical meetings are happening. The other part of the room within earshot is the planning team. And so myself and others were drawing plans. And so if I'm leading a meeting, the other planners would hear somebody say, well, whatever you do, don't do this. And then they start.
And you see the big eraser going.
Exactly. So that's great. And it happens real time. And then, the public is sort of just milling around and able to come into the studio and watch us plan. And they're just like, first of all, they didn't know. I think a lot of the people do draw plans or think, or whatever, and certainly never had the opportunity to be involved. And we also have our renderer doing these amazing renderings. And rather than just drawing like theoretical concepts or whatever, and it might just get somebody excited, we actually, draw a piece of the plan and we say, here, do a rendering of this. And so I can say on the plan, this is that spot. And this is the view that is, and they build a sort of a little 3D model, and he draws on top of it, so it's actually to scale and accurate and all of those things. And then we wrap it all up with a big closing presentation on the last night where we show all of the results. We go through what we heard, and we, as always, as we do with every presentation, we open it up for the community to give input.
And there were probably well over 200 people at the closing presentation for this, and we did it again at FCA, Franklin Christian Academy, and I'm sure we'll be able to cycle some photos of that into this video if you're watching. But I think what blew my mind, and I think it blew your mind, we talked about it, was just the absolute lack of opposition. Look, there's a NIMBYism, not in my backyard ism, is everywhere, and it's perfectly natural. Look, we're here, close the gate. We don't want any more people here, and Brian did a great job at the very beginning that to show some overhead pictures or some aerial satellite photography of this area just 20 years ago and what it looked like compared to what it looks like today. And
no West Haven, no Franklin Green, no animal shelter, no FCA, none of that. Everybody's a newcomer, especially compared to the shorts.
Right. And so the convention is, you go over and say, all right, raise your hand if you've been here for 5 years. Okay, now 10 years and 50, and then all of a sudden, you've got like 2 people in the room. It's like, well, all right, you can thank everyone else for letting us come to live here because this is a great place to live and all that. And if it weren't for development, then no one would be here because this place was just a tiny little town. Even so, I grew up here. I grew up in Columbia, Tennessee. Went to school here at BGA, and Franklin, Tennessee was cool then. This is in the late '80s and early '90s. But it was nothing like it is today, which is it's suburban in context, but it is its own place for sure. And now it's extremely desirable. People want to be here, and now we get to develop one of the premier locations in one of the premier locations in the country, and that's super exciting, and thankfully we've got a family that we have partnered with to do this that is completely on the same page, and that is something that was they were obviously really worried about the charrette. They wanted it, and they said this is how we're going to do it, but they the sidebar conversations we'd have with the family where it's like, well, what if they want something that we don't want?
Right. Are you sure you can control this?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's not going to get out of hand and you're going to promise them a space needle or something?
Yeah, right. And but it didn't happen, and that was and they were like, what if exactly. What if they want a space needle, or what if they hate the idea of an agra-hood and all this kind of stuff, and it just didn't happen. There was zero opposition, and people were just really fired up about not only the process but also the product.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned earlier that it's impossible to create consensus, completely, but I started my firm 18 years ago. I think the charrette for Armistead was our 60th charrette all over the country, and it was the first time ever that we had there was no one who had anything negative to say. In fact, so much so that if you remember at the closing presentation, if you're there, I said, surely somebody has something they don't like. Please tell us. Like I was just, begging for something. I said, we can take it. I know we're all in the South and we're all want to be polite, but please, we need to hear something. And there was nothing. It was amazing. And also you mentioned the family. It's also been amazing to watch them have consensus too, because we've worked with other families around the country, and it is not the case. It is definitely hard to get people on the same page, even if they're in the same family. Sometimes, especially because they're in the same family. And the Shorts have been amazing partners in this as well.
Yeah, and so now that we are. We're through the charrette, and the next step is to actually, because what we have to do is, because right now, even though the area is a part of Envision Franklin, which is the comprehensive plan, which essentially lays out the growth that the city would like to see in the city, and but it is currently zoned agriculture because that's what it has been, like we said, for the last 135 years. So, and
unfortunately, it doesn't mean that we can grow a village.
Right,
you can grow other things, just not a village yet.
No. But so now we've got to go in and we've got to say, all right, we took this plan that we sort of generated at the charrette. Over 5 days, and obviously, you tweak it after that and say, oh gosh, we got to put the road up here and we got to talk to the city and all that kind of stuff. But tell our listeners a little bit about the rezoning process and just the steps to get from here to the ability to put a shovel in the ground, or I guess not a shovel or a bulldozer, not a spade. Right. We can do that now.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said before, the city is very focused on planning. We were fortunate enough to have gotten to help them do the zoning ordinance update a couple of years ago, as well as the historic district guidelines. And so, we're very familiar with the zoning process. But even before, sort of a higher level than the zoning ordinance that regulates the property, you also have the comprehensive plan for the city, which is called Envision Franklin. And it's being updated right now. But Envision Franklin, at this moment, anticipates the property being what's called a conservation subdivision. And as well as there's a certain area of it called neighborhood mixed use, I believe. And so there's two different land uses, both future land uses, both on the same property. The conservation subdivision regulations in Envision Franklin are really focused on, as you can imagine, conservation, in which case you've got to conserve or preserve 50% of the land. And it can be, open space of various types, agriculture, there's just, you can't develop on it. And then there are some other sort of specific overlaid standards, particularly related to this property, that Envision Franklin calls out as well. And then, so from there, we're zoned, as Craige said, agriculture. So you have to rezone the property in order to be in keeping with Envision Franklin and that future land use. And so to do that, you go through a PD, or plan development application, where essentially you are, creating zoning that is the rules and regulations specific to creating the community envisioned for this land throughout the charrette process. And so to do that, you go through the writing, the drafting of that new ordinance, and then you have to go through the official process with the city, where you've sort of explained what you're trying to do. You ask for permission. If there's any deviations that you need from sort of the standard way of doing things, you have to explain that. It's a very rigorous process. The city of Franklin, sometimes people see lots of growth and development happening and they're like, why is the city letting this happen? And I think most developers would say the city's not letting it happen. Like, the city allows it, if you follow the rules, but it's no cakewalk. It's very, very,
and it's also it's a public process, which is exactly what makes the charrette so important, or that public process on the front end so important. So we can build a group of people and we can go to the BOMA, the board of mayor and aldermen, and tell them that we have we've received input from the public early and often, and then that way when it comes before the BOMA and the public and some of the public meetings, there's some support there, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And as I mentioned, because most developments are not really eager to get public input, the city does require you to do a neighborhood meeting as one of the sort of boxes you have to check in the process. But normally that neighborhood meeting is after there's a plan, you present it, so more so that people are aware of it, not to necessarily receive input and adjust your plan. And so all the stuff that I described about the charrette is in addition to the actual regular process of the city that's required. In addition, and it's funny for us because we do the charrette process, we always feel a little bit awkward doing the neighborhood meeting because it's like, well, we've done so much, and we're happy to see you all again, and you all have been updated because you've been watching the podcast or whatever, but it's necessary, and it's a good thing that the city requires that as part of the process. Yeah.
So the timeline. So we expect to be our first sort of submittal or submission will go in at the end of September, in September 2023. And that starts what's essentially a 6-month process, right?
We hope.
Yeah. Assuming or hopefully willing into existence a streamlined 6-month process with 3 public meetings, with several meetings with planning department that are official, and as well as and then submitting a development plan, and then entitlement, which means really that we are entitled to build what we say we wanted to build here, happens in April, right? That's, I think so. If we play our cards right, then we're getting that in April. Of course, that doesn't mean that's when we start building. As you might imagine.
If any BOMA members are watching, I hope you're not chuckling right now. Like, good luck, or whatever. Because, like I said, Franklin we really have to prove it. I mean, a lot of people worry, that something might not be thought about, or might not be covered, or what about traffic, or what about flooding, or what about all these things? Well, part of that process that we have to go through isn't just saying, here's what we want to do. We have to prove that we can do it, that it will work and not cause a bunch of negative impacts for everybody. And so the city's really good about staying on top of you and making sure that you're doing that. But as part of that process, sometimes there are things they want more information about. And so you go to a public hearing, they say, we love what you're doing, but we think you might need to adjust your study for this or that or the other. And so we're going to defer it. We're not going to vote on it tonight. Right. We're going to go to then. That's why I said, hopefully we'll be done within 6 months or whatever, because it can extend based on that process. But I would say that, in the history of Franklin, there aren't very many projects that, at least at this point, have been so well received, so welcomed, and so people being so excited about it and anticipating it, except for maybe West Haven. But I have the sense there's even more buzz about this.
Yeah, because West Haven proved the concept of a walkable, compact, mixed-use environment, and so there, so I'm sure back in when was that 19 or the early 2000s, when that came on, that was still a little bit of, we don't know what that is. And so I'm a little afraid. Yeah. And so now, hopefully what we're doing is the perfect blend of this new urbanism community with the agricultural heritage and blending in the family's ties to the town. I'm hopeful, but that's, I have the curse of the optimist in me. So I'm thinking we may get through this in 6 months.
Well, and I think too, one of the reasons why this is so exciting for so many people is because there's such a passion for the rural character. Like, people get downtown Franklin, let's preserve that. And, like I said, we worked on the historic district guidelines, all about preserving what everyone loves in those 16 blocks. But people also love the opposite end of the character, our least dense, our most rural and bucolic areas. And it's been a real question. It's like, how do we allow development and to not lose all of that? And so I think for the first time, people are starting to get a sense like, there may be a solution to this.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about in Armistead could be that. And, for those of you who are sort of into planning and have, kind of been around, there's a project that has been really inspirational for us that I've, watched develop over the years and know the developer of that. It's called Serenbe, right outside of Atlanta. And a lot of people, you mentioned agrihood, and they say, oh, is that kind of like Serenbe? They do have a little bit of agriculture there. They've done a great job with that. But they focus on preserving that, sort of rural character and small town charm. And, Franklin, while West Haven is great, I don't know that many people would say it feels rural, And so we're going to kind of blend the best of both. We're going to take all the things that people love about West Haven and add that sort of rural and agricultural overlay to it, so that we can have all, it can be everything.
Yeah. I think that is. I think that's what people are going to be most excited about, and hopefully that's what will get this process, streamlined as best we can. So to keeping up with the timeline, once we have that together, then that's when we start. That's when I get kicked into real gear, and we start doing horizontal development, which means we got to put roads and water and sewer and all the utilities, and we start building some of the amenities that the community will have, which we'll talk about in more detail in later podcasts. But they're obviously, we can do the farm, right away.
Yeah.
And that's what's neat is that one thing we know this land does do well is produce vegetables and raise livestock. So it has been, and it's still right now. It's a farm lease, and someone's we're growing soybeans over there now, corn sometimes in the summer, and we've got some cows grazing over there. That will continue for the foreseeable future until it just gets to be just too much for those cows, but we hope to get them back as soon as possible. But I think what I'm excited about once we get the horizontal development going, and and start with the process of delivering these pads, where we will then go vertical with, is activating that historic farm and getting that back to a place where people can come visit, even in the pre-development time, where we may not have anybody living there, but to be able to bring people to the farm and to allow them to experience it and see what this is going to be. And that's where we'll set up a sales office and kind of have events and stuff to be able to get people familiar with the community. I'm really excited about that, because that is, it's hosting, it's introducing, it's unveiling, and that's what we're going to do. And this is going to be a public place. It is a community, and you can own a piece of it here, but anybody can come visit. And that's a central tenet of what a mixed use neighborhood is that it is connected to the outside world.
Yeah, and I think really one of our goals is to make sure that the end result of this is as welcoming and people feel as comfortable coming here, even if they don't live here, as the residents do, and finding a good balance of sort of the simpler life, the, sort of feeling like you're, at home and, not overrun by visitors, but at the same time, having everyone be able to experience what we're doing. And, in future podcasts, we'll get more into sort of the big ideas, the details of what we're trying to accomplish. In addition, things like being a regional food hub. What does that mean? And some of the specific design concepts that we're going to incorporate. How we're going to protect and enhance the riparian corridor around the stream that runs through. What we'll do with the historic farm buildings and how we can give them a new life and incorporate them. On and on and on. There's so much to this. It's like the hardest thing to end episode 1,
right? Because
I'm like, I can't wait to share the rest.
Yeah.
It's so much to come.
Yeah, no, this is super exciting, and we certainly thank you, the listener or the watcher, or, the viewer, for being here and listening in. And if you like what you see here, please share it. We want this process to be transparent, but if a tree falls in a farm and no one is there to hear it, did it really happen? Right. And that's what we want. So we want to get listeners, we want to get people following, we want support for the project, and we want you to come visit when you get a chance. So what you can visit right now is our website, armisteadtn.com, ARMISTEADTN.com. I did that first take. Or you can email us at hello@armisteadtn.com and ask any questions. The website is under development, so you might see some weird stuff in there. Some links may not go somewhere anywhere just yet, but as this whole process will go, we're going to do this transparently and not hide the fact that we're building something from nothing.
Things aren't perfect on a farm.
No,
that's part of the beauty of it, the organic nature, and things happening that you didn't anticipate, and so I think rather than trying to make sure everything is perfect and refined before we let you know about it or let you be part of it, kind of like this podcast.
That's right.
We'd rather get stuff out there and let you follow along with us, and hopefully we'll look back at this episode 1 down the road and we'll go, man, things are so much better now. We do a better job.
That's right.
And we know all of you, and so I think following along, this will be kind of like a video and audio journal of the process, the project, in a way that even if you aren't thinking about moving to Armistead, you might find it interesting just to follow along and learn about how a development happens, how what it takes to make a village.
Right. That's right. There's nothing more exhilarating or challenging or daunting than creating a new community from nothing. Mm-hmm. And that is what has driven both of our careers, frankly. And this is what we are most excited about. And the opportunity to do this in our home, and working for an incredible family like the Shorts is really a dream come true. And we just want to thank you for listening. So let's wrap it. What do you think? Yeah. All right. We'll work on our outro. I'm sure there'll be something clever coming soon. But for now.
Wait, hold on. I think I hear it. I think I hear the cows coming home.
Oh, yes. Very good. Very good.
The cows have come home. All right, y'all.
Thanks,
Sorry
Brian.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, we can't be a first podcast without one good dad joke.
All right.
All right.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.